Thank you. My name's Scott Reimer, McMaster class of '88. Go Marauders. And my daughter Rebecca is in fourth year kin here at Mac. I feel really old because when I was walking in, the only two buildings I recognized were the Mills Library and the Social Sciences building. So it looks a lot different around here. My sister-in-law, Dr. Joan Weber, who works at the Cancer Research Center at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, has called me a bit of a unicorn in the cancer world. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer 10 years ago at the age of 44, so I'm probably the youngest prostate cancer survivor you're ever going to meet. And exactly a year ago, I was completing my treatments for oropharyngeal cancer, and I'm just learning to pronounce that word now. My first experience with cancer was actually in 2003 when my wife Brenda was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, positive in 5 lymph nodes. And she is here with me today, and we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. So my most recent experience with cancer started in December 2017. Just before Christmas, I felt a large lump in my neck, just below my jawline. My sister-in-law told me that it couldn't be cancer because no one gets diagnosed with 2 completely unrelated cancers before their 53rd birthday, but I did. I had my biopsy just before Christmas, but I wouldn't receive the results until the new year. So for the next 10 days, of course, there was a lot of uncertainty. And of course, I consulted with Dr. Google to find out what I had, which is often a bad idea. The period between the time of the biopsy and the first pathology report is a very stressful time. The problem with the internet searches these days, there's just too much information. And without having the training to know how to navigate through all this sheer massive information, you can certainly lead yourself into some scary places. I remember one night I drilled into a site that talked about salivary gland cancer because my symptoms presented in a very similar way. And I was looking at the page that said that the life expectancy for the cancer I was looking at was typically less than 1 year. So I handed my laptop to my wife and just sat down, and we both didn't say anything. After that night, I put my computer away. I just could not find anything that was giving me any sort of comfort at that time. I received the results of my biopsy on January 3rd. The general surgeon who did the biopsy told me I had squamous cell carcinoma with an unknown primary. I remember precisely what he said when he read my report. Upon reflection, I came to the belief that he was reading the report for the first time when I was sitting in his office. And he said to me, "I can't candy coat this for you. You have metastasized cancer, and we don't know where it originated from." That's pretty much all he told me. I don't necessarily blame him for that. Doctors are very busy, and as you know, people specialize in different things, and he was a general surgeon, so he didn't know any more details at that point. So I left his office believing that I wasn't going to make it. This is a feeling that is impossible to describe if you haven't been through it. Imagining how your family will work without you, not walking your daughter down the aisle or meeting your grandchildren. My son had just announced his wedding engagement a couple weeks earlier, and I had decided that I was not going to tell him the details if the news remained bad. His wedding date was only 7 months away. I didn't want my prognosis to take the joy out of this exciting stage in his life. Over the next few weeks, I had several probes and scans done. On January 12th, I had my first meeting with an ENT specialist. This was the day where I finally received some specific information about my cancer. The doctor told me, "I'm not going to tell you that your cancer is treatable. I'm going to tell you that your cancer is curable." So my brand of cancer had a P16 marker, which means that it had a viral cause, and that meant it was curable. The same exact cancer without that particular marker has a very different result. So he told me that my chances of long-term survival were good. He did, however, tell me that the surgeries and treatment were not going to be pleasant, but it was still a very good day. Surgery was then canceled to remove my tonsils, where they ultimately found the primary cancer. It had spread to the lymph nodes in my neck. The recovery from this surgery was extremely painful. I learned that having your tonsils removed as an adult is a very different process than as a child. I went through some very unpleasant treatment I had 7 weeks of daily radiation, and I had 3 rounds of chemo. The side effects were brutal: constant mouth sores, inability to swallow and produce saliva. I had a feeding tube installed shortly after the treatments began, and I lost a total of 40 pounds, which for someone who had the classic dad bod, that wasn't altogether a bad thing. I just remember counting down the days when I would feel well again and would be free of pain and experience the joy of eating. On 2 occasions, my blood pressure was so low I fainted because I got up too fast. And on one of those occasions, I fell and hit my head and suffered a concussion and had some short-term memory loss. I would learn along the way that I could possibly suffer from permanent effects from the treatments. Most survivors have some impairment of their saliva glands. You'll hear me kind of slurring my words a bit because my mouth is getting dry. And I wouldn't know for a couple of years how full my recovery would be. I think I was, again, one of the lucky ones. 1 year later, I still suffer from dry mouth, and food definitely doesn't taste the same, but all things considered, I'm doing pretty good. The person that first gave me hope was the ENT specialist who told me about the curability of this cancer. But the period of time where I was unsure of my prognosis and was facing my own mortality changed me forever. When you're recovering from cancer treatments, you are trying to recover both physically and emotionally. So I can relate with the feelings of anxiety and depression that many sufferers have to deal with. I also witnessed it with my wife 15 years earlier. I remember trying to stay strong for her, but at the same time scared to death of losing the love of my life and the possibility of having to raise 2 children on my own. Feeling hopeless is a terrible thing. To a cancer patient, hope is the most valuable and precious commodity. Like many cancers, research in the treatment of oropharyngeal cancer in the last few decades has greatly improved the long-term survivals for the patients. When my wife was going through her treatments, I would spend hours on the internet researching every word and phrase from her pathology reports, looking for hope. I remember that I wouldn't tell her everything that I read, only the good stuff. According to the historical statistics at the time, her chances weren't very good. She had metastasis in 5 lymph nodes. But what I learned was that for the large part, the information I was reading was from the past. The data on the current patients hadn't been compiled and analyzed yet. The advances in breast cancer research have come a long way. Cases are diagnosed at an earlier stage, and improved surgery and drug treatment options are available now. Through research, we've been able to learn much more about how cancer works, how it interacts with the body's immune systems. But the work is far from over. Cancer is not one disease, it's hundreds of diseases. For example, oropharyngeal cancer, they know that the treatments are seeing success, but the experts believe that we are actually being overtreated, that the survivors are suffering from acute toxicity, and as mentioned, many suffer from life-altering side effects. Some have to continue using their feeding tube for the rest of their lives, and others have severe problems caused by the loss of their saliva glands. More research is still needed in the area of reducing the severity of the treatments while maintaining survival rates. So what you're doing here today is so important, and I sincerely thank you all for helping give me and all the other survivors precious hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott, for the very moving speech, and we just want to say that this is why we do it, guys. We do it for me, we do it for you, we do it for people like Scott and his family. I just wanted to let everybody know now that we're going to be starting the Survivors Lap. It's going to commence the beginning of the night in Burridge Gym. We're going to let the survivors go first. If you see, we're going to head out these doors. Just keep an eye on Nicole. She's going to keep